And it's crazy. We are already here to championship week in college football. He's Mike Huseman. I'm John Vogel. Welcome into Gridiron Eve. How are we doing tonight, Mike?
Good. We are doing quite well. I'm glad to be here. Obviously, it was a fast regular season, man. I
Yeah,
like
it
you. I
was.
can't
It's
believe
always
we're
too
all.
fast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're week 14. I think is what it is technically, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
we obviously only have a limited number of games this week, but we did have an eventful rivalry week. Last week, John made some ground up. I was plus 50 going in. We had 5 challenges last week. John got me in 3 of them. So in our Friday games, I had Mizzou plus 3 against Arkansas. They held on for that one. It looked competitive. It was close for a while. Um, then Florida State minus 9.5 over Florida. John got me on that one. Seminoles won, but Gators did cover. And early on, it looked like it could go my way, but basically the whole second half, you kind of got the impression Florida was going to cover. So then we had Buffalo minus 4 against Kent State, and Golden Flashes got it done. Buffalo, very poor ending to the last 3 games.
See, I told you. I
Yeah.
told you what my thought process was behind that, and that was
Yeah.
straight up. I think that Buffalo is going to win.
Yep.
But because everything in my brain is telling me that, but everything in the MAC, every time I go with my brain in the MAC, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm wrong again, and so I will pick the other team.
Yeah. No, I get that. Now, the other one, Notre Dame plus 5.5. They had got it within a possession a few times, but that was another one I was never really comfortable with. Like, once the game got into the second half, you kind of felt like USC was going to do what they had to do and pull away.
Caleb
And then
Williams, take a second
so,
to throw out a Caleb Williams here. Heisman, congratulations.
Absolutely.
Sealed it.
He deserves
He
it.
sealed it. Yep, absolutely. Great job.
And then the last one, I had Oregon State plus 3 against Oregon. Never in doubt. I had it the whole way, so we're pretty good there.
Oh, you were in doubt. You were in doubt.
No,
they were down by what? 21? Was it 21? Or was it 24?
21 or 24. Yeah, I think it was 21 2 different times, and Beebs came back, got it done.
Were you even watching the game?
Yes, I switched it to that game. Not when it was 24-3. When they had gotten a few scores back, and when it became a 2-possession game, that's when I turned it back on.
I watched the entire game. That was my featured game, on my screen setup, because with the 3 screens, switching between 1, 2, and 3, and jumping around the different games and looking at, for NFL draft purposes. But that was my featured game this week, and it was crazy how, just the entire momentum switched. It was like a light switch, and it just
Jonathan Smith's doing a great job there.
They didn't throw the ball. They didn't fucking throw the ball once. In that comeback, they just ran it.
Interesting. You see, obviously, Gal Branson's been the guy lately, but the past hour or so, Chance Nolan did enter the transfer portal. I don't know if you saw that.
That doesn't shock me at all.
So two starting P5 QBs have entered today, in Nolan, and Brennan Armstrong from Virginia also entered.
Yeah, I saw Brennan, and I saw that, and I think that he's going to go somewhere and probably do really well.
Yeah, I think Armstrong for sure will be a P5 starter. Nolan probably won't be.
No. And Nolan could go, let's say, I'm trying to think of we'll see how the transfer portal shakes out. We know that there's going to be another 50 quarterbacks at least that'll enter in Division I, or at least FBS. But I think that he could settle into someplace like in the Mountain West or someplace like that and do really well.
I think that's a fair. Yeah. The other big college news we had today, Tom Herman is now the head coach at Florida Atlantic. Former
Crazy
Texas, Houston coach. I think for them it's a great hire. You're, I think, kind of doing what you did with Lane Kiffin, where you win a lot of games 2-3 years, then you're probably looking for another guy, and for them that's great. Like, you're probably okay doing that. And I do think he will win. Even his record at Texas was pretty good if you look at it. Their expectations were just unrealistic. They still are. But
yeah, and I think I definitely I hear that part of it, but I also think that when he was at Texas, he was in a little bit over his head.
Yep,
And
I think that absolutely could be true.
and it's not just it's because Texas has some of the most notoriously terrible boosters in all of college football. I'm probably gonna have Texas fans all up my bat for saying that.
I hope you
But
do. Yep.
that's the truth, right? Is that their boosters are terrible at Texas. They have, like you said, the unrealistic expectations, trying to manage the boosters and the players and
Yeah.
everything at the same time. Herman was over his head. He's a great football coach,
Yeah.
and that's why he's going to do really well at Florida Atlantic, because you don't have that kind of, those different spaces that you have to manage separately.
I think that's fair.
And somehow entwine them. So yeah, he'll get back to just doing football and being a ball coach and recruiting.
Yeah,
really great.
And I think we will see him at a P5 school again someday.
Oh yeah,
no idea where. I couldn't tell you where it's going to be, but I bet it happens.
Yeah, because you just never know at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, he could be at Florida Atlantic for a year or two and be on his way to West Virginia or something. I don't know. I'm just saying.
We have
you just never know.
And West Virginia, one of the jobs we thought would be open, hired a new athletic director, former North Texas AD, and has said Neil Brown will not be fired this offseason. He basically said he's on thin ice, but he will go into next season as the head coach.
Oh yeah, which is very, very shocking. I think it's very surprising. So
if it would have been the same AD, I think he would have gotten fired. But if you're a new AD, I understand the move because you can kick the can down the road. You're 2 weeks on the job. You don't need your marquee hire to be made this quick. Whereas if you go into next season and Neil Brown does bad, you fire him in September like Scott Frost got fired. Oh, well, the old guy did that. I'm correcting his mistake now.
That's fair. That is fair too.
Yeah.
Now, the thing I want to bring up before we start talking games and stuff is, did you see the video of the Jackson State reporter talking to Deion Sanders?
I read the quotes. I did not see the video.
Okay, so basically, Deion, if you haven't seen it, it's on my Twitter. You can see it, and it's one of the more popular tweets I have right now because I just reposted the video. But it is hilarious of this Jackson State reporters were told not to ask him about potential job openings and where he could be going. And so the reporter went through a very creative way to basically say, so my favorite team, the Kansas City Chiefs, are going to Denver next week, and I was wondering if you want to ride out there. And Deion played it really cool. He was like, hey, that's really good. That was really good. It's hilarious.
Okay.
So if you take the minute and a half and watch it.
It's going to be interesting. Like, part of me feels like now it's down to Colorado and South Florida. I don't know if maybe Cincinnati's in the mix for him. I know one of the interesting things I read tonight was with South Florida, he's interested, but he made a point of their facilities are pretty second rate for that level, and he wants some input in designing those. So
we'll see where he. Like, look at all that what Jackson State already had decent facilities when he walked in, but I mean, like, they changed them a lot over the last couple of years. You walk in that locker room and it looks like it's a totally different locker room. Okay. So they're at least what it used to be. You see the videos of them hanging out in there. So yeah, he wants to step up. Colorado, I think their facilities are decent, but again,
I'm sure they
I think that's if you're building, this is why I'm leaning with Deion going to Colorado. And I think I hear all the South Florida stuff.
I'm actually with you on that as well.
But I think that it's really down between them and Cincinnati. And I'll tell you why I think it's Cincinnati too. Because the way that I was looking at this, Colorado right now has their roster depleted. They are in the Pac-12, which is relatively unknown ground right now in terms of if that conference is going to survive. We've talked a lot about it on this show. But the thing is, you've got USC and UCLA leaving. So that means you don't have to flip the roster. It's already flipped itself. You get to walk in there, bring your guys in there with you, and you're talking about potentially playing in 2024, no USC, no UCLA. You're a conference championship winner. Potentially. You do it the right way. And then you're springboarding up to a bigger job. That's the way I kind of see it.
How quick they can contend for the conference title That's something I hadn't thought about until just now. It's a really good question. That roster is so bad right now, which,
Well, that's what I'm
like you
saying.
said, that could be an appealing thing for him in some ways. You're going to punt year one, probably. I mean, they're probably still going to be pretty lousy next year. But year two,
are they?
you might. I think they are.
He's going to bring his sons with him. Shader's going to go to Colorado if he goes there.
The other one was at South Carolina before, though, here. So him transferring does become problematic.
Well, I mean, at least the quarterback is going to come along.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got the quarterback. That's not a concern.
Maybe you do. Again, going from a poor FCS conference to a P5 conference is a big step up.
Yeah, but I've been talking with some NFL people, some NFL scouts. They all agree he's solid.
Okay.
They're already looking at him as a solid prospect.
Okay, that says a lot then.
Yeah, no. So I think because that was my first question too, was can he compete at that level? NFL's not worried about it at all. So that tells me that this guy's he's got the goods. He's got that dog in him. You know what I'm saying?
And the one thing why I question if they could compete for a conference title. So I think year one is out. For conference title.
I think they could win 5 games year one.
I think that's fair. And when I was comparing them with Deion next year, I see a lot of parables with the way Texas A&M was this year. You have an elite recruiting class, but a lot of transition in your guys that were always there. It's tough to win games in a P5 conference with a roster like that in year one. You're building for the future in a nice way, but it's tough to win right away.
But I'm gonna argue against you just here again, because this is the point that I want to make about this and why this is why I think that Deion going someplace is big. Okay. And it's because and why I think the roster is as important as this being already flipped.
I think it's big too that he's going somewhere. But yeah.
So Tennessee, Josh Heupel, he comes in. That roster gets flipped just naturally because 35 people entered the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. Year 2, they win 10 games. Okay. The other thing too is USC this past offseason. Lincoln Riley takes that job. He walks in there and says, I have 30 roster spots that I need to flip, and he flips them.
Yep.
Off the get-go. They're competing right now. Now, that's USC, and I get that. That's USC. They have the name brand. They have the crazy stuff that's behind it. But I'm saying that this is not a concept that is struggling in college football right now. Because to walk into a roster that's already flipped, you have the name brand that you have in Deion Sanders going there. You're going to recruit really, really well. You're going to bring in whoever you want.
Yeah.
And because of that, and then having the quarterback situation solidified as well, you walk in there, the roster's already flipped for you. You just start filling in the gaps. You lose USC and UCLA in 2024. That's year 2. Okay. Yeah. That helps you tremendously because now we're talking about, so probably 10 teams in the Pac-12, unless they add a couple, for that year, pull up Boise State and whoever.
We're hearing, we are hearing they are going to add San Diego State. It sounds like that's almost a done deal.
Right. So they'll bring in some schools and stuff, but now they're going to be adjusting to that level as well. So now you have an advantage over 2 extra schools that you're not going to lose to. You build that roster the way that you're talking about. You pull another number 1 recruit, like you just pulled Travis Hunter, who will probably be in Colorado too. I mean, you're talking about flipping a roster in 2 years, losing the 2 top teams in that conference that are going to compete against you for a championship appearance, and you're there. That's the point that I'm making.
Looking at their out-of-conference schedule next year, just for the sake of seeing who they'd play, it's interesting. Their schedule's kind of a bear next year. They go to TCU, the season opener. I did not realize that. Then they have Nebraska and Colorado State out-of-conference.
Nebraska, Colorado, that's an old rivalry right there, too. That's a good one to bring
sure
back.
Is. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Then in conference, obviously they don't play everybody, but they have some of the tough ones. Oregon State, USC, Oregon, Utah, UCLA, they all play. So
right, but
no
point is,
But I think, like you said, winning 5 or 6 is certainly doable in year 1. Absolutely.
Yeah, you win 5-6 games, you're set to walk into year 2 and you have a legitimate shot at winning that championship there because now you're not dealing with USC and UCLA. They're gone.
Yeah.
That's the point. That's why I think that he's going to pick Colorado. Now, I think Cincinnati's still in play just because, but I don't think it's as likely because he has to walk in there and flip a roster. And I don't think he's really wants to do that.
Yeah, I also think Colorado is much more likely.
So with that being said, I guess we could go ahead and start talking about games here because we've got about 45 minutes left, a little less than that. So let's talk about, I'm trying to wait for the ticker to roll back around so I can see it again.
Okay.
So
it's UTSA North Texas is our first game. It is UTSA is favored by 8.5 points. They are at home. And I like the Roadrunners to cover that. I'm a big Jeff Traylor fan. Frank Harris has done well. Brady's ran the ball for quite a few touchdowns. Franklin is a fantastic receiver. And I like North Texas. There's no doubt in my mind. That they'll win. Covering 8.5, you add in a second score. That's tougher, but I like them to do it. So I am going with the Roadrunners to win the Conference USA title game.
Yeah, I can't compete with that. Can't challenge that. I think at UTSA, they're loaded on both sides of the ball, at least for that level. And North Texas has been extremely inconsistent all year. We've talked about it a lot on the show over the year. I can't see a scenario where North Texas wins. I don't see a scenario where North Texas really even competes and stays within double digits. So I think UTSA wins by double digits. 8.5 is a really easy spread.
I hope so. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But
if we both start 0-1 Friday afternoon, that's going to be funny.
yeah, you never know. So the first 3 games we're talking about for our listeners are the Friday games. So
right.
I'll move on to game number 2, I suppose. Pac-12. We have USC is 2.5 point favorites over Utah. This game is in Allegiant, the Raider Stadium in Las Vegas. And much like they did earlier in the year, I like the Utes in this one to cover that 2.5. So they're a well-rounded team. Not that USC isn't, but Tavion Thomas is a good running back. Cam Rising's a good QB. They have Dalton Kincaid, a man who may have been snubbed as a Mackey finalist. He's an absolute stud tight end. And USC's defense just isn't very good. I like Utah to run the ball. Obviously, it was a 1-point game. Utah, it came down to a 2-point conversion earlier in the year. But I'm going to go with the Utes in this one. Are you challenging this one, John?
Yeah, I'm going to challenge this one. Okay. I'm going to say USC wins by a touchdown.
Okay.
And it will be late game heroics from our 2B Heisman winner, Caleb Williams. And that's what's going to be the key. It's going to be a last-minute drive, probably limited timeouts. He's going to drive him down the field because that's the thing, too, is we haven't talked much about this. Utah's defense has not been good either.
No, they haven't been.
So
I would argue they've been better than USC's, but they have not.
Oh, they have, but USC's offense is way better than Utah's. Way better.
Yeah.
Miles better. And then we don't know which Cam Rising we're going to see either Friday night.
We certainly don't.
And so in these matchup games,
that's my biggest worry. So I will say from my end, what Cam Rising we will see is the biggest question I have.
It's huge. And then they're also going to be without running back Tavion Thomas, who's declared for the NFL draft. So they'll be running some of their other guys that didn't play as much.
I actually thought he was going to play this game and not the bowl game. I was
as far as I'm tracking, because he was officially declared, he's forfeited his college eligibility. So because that's typically the holdup with teams that are in a conference run like that. But as far as I'm tracking, he's out. He's not playing.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
I think that when you have a game that was so close earlier in the year by a 2-point conversion, you won off of. I just think that it's so hard to come in there and win that game again against that same opponent, and now you're missing
Yep.
pieces that you didn't have that you had, previously. I like USC by a touchdown. I do think it's close. I think they have to drive the field. Literally, we'll drive the field tie, or maybe it's even they pull this 2-point conversion thing again. They will drive the field at the end of the game.
I have a question about a game adjacent concept. If Utah wins and Caleb Williams throws up a stinker, do you think he still wins the Heisman? I think he probably does, but it's interesting. And I think part of that might be, I'm assuming a lot of people have already sent in their ballots and have him high up on the list.
Yeah, I think that there's a good chance that he doesn't run away with it, because I think right now we're looking with what it looks like right now, he runs away with that award.
Yep.
I mean,
I think we're talking about a huge margin if they win and if he plays well.
Yeah, like maybe 15 or 20 other first place votes, period. Just like the consistency that he's played with this year has been unparalleled to anyone in college football. Anyone. And we know that the Heisman voters, they love stats. He's got a ton of them. We know that they love big games. They love highlight games, blah, 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 this and that. He's got them.
He does.
He just got his signature moment in the last week of the season against Notre Dame. Signature moment. Bam. We know that they love that too. So, yeah, I think honestly, I'm not saying that he doesn't win it if they lose this game, because I don't think it's because of ballots being sent already. I just think that there's no one playing this week in the conference championship slate that can really compete with him.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
So the third game on Friday, which one is that?
That is Akron-Buffalo, one of our makeup games, which is not a conference title game, obviously.
Yes.
It was it's in Buffalo because they had the blizzard and the game got postponed. We have Akron going to Buffalo at +11, and I like the Zips to cover that 11 points. Buffalo has been so horrendous the last month, absolutely terrible. I think they've packed in it the season and really checked out. And Akron, they're not winning games, but they're playing a lot better, and they're having a lot of one-possession games lately.
Didn't they just win this week?
Spread of 11, I like Akron.
I thought Akron won this week, and I thought they won big, if I remember correctly. I'm pulling up their schedule real quick.
Akron beat Northern Illinois by a lot, but that was only their second win and their first conference win.
I knew that. I knew that.
It was their only win. It was their only win against a FBS team.
Yeah, and Northern Illinois, they had so much talent this year, and they just, I don't know what happened. It just was so squandered.
They did have some injuries. Northern Illinois.
Rocky Lombardi. Yeah. But I mean, like, that defense should have been a lot better than it was, and it wasn't this year. That was a shocking thing about them, I think, was that defense didn't compete. So my brain does tell me that, yes, Buffalo wins this game. Buffalo should run away with this game. That's what my brain is sitting here telling me. Just, looking at the matchups, looking at different stuff. Yeah. But what was the rule that I had last week, Mike?
It's about the MACs, and is it about the MAC teams, and you're not going to go with your gut on those games?
I can't trust my brain on these games. Okay. My brain is always wrong on these games.
Okay.
And so there's a part of me that wants to, just because my brain is telling me, yeah, Buffalo's going to win this. There's a part of me that wants to challenge the pick, and it's because I'm so many points down. But then I would break my rule.
That was part of it for me with this game. In a vacuum, I would have still picked Akron, but it was also appealing to me that I looked at that spread. I'm like, this is a game John might challenge, and I really like my odds if he does
it. Advantages, picking first.
Absolutely.
Let me think. I got to think. I have to make a quick decision here. We're down to about 35 minutes left on this show. So,
okay.
You know what? Fuck it. I challenge it. Okay. You got me. I'm down 45 points. I have to go ahead and take this risk, especially because I've got some bowl games that I might be able to make some leverage. I might be able to catch up a little bit on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. I got to try with that.
Okay.
So
I get that. Yeah. Next game, we're now moving on to Saturday, people. Next one, we have the Big Ten in a game which, surprisingly enough, is probably meaningless. Michigan could probably lose and still go to the playoffs. They are 16.5-point favorites against Purdue. This spread has been a little wonky and moved a bit. I like Michigan to win. I like the Boilermakers to cover that 16.5, though. So Michigan has, I'm sure many of you know by now, Blake Corum is out for the rest of the year. He is having leg surgery. And Michigan will have a notable absence on the defensive side of the ball after a very unfortunate arrest today in Ann Arbor.
I didn't hear about this. Wait, what?
I'm the
D
lineman.
It's not the UT Martin transfer, is it?
No. I'm an idiot for not having this.
I didn't even see this yet. Michigan arrest, I guess. Michigan football. I might pull it up. No, not
Maisie Smith. That was it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Obviously, a stud player. I can't believe I blanked on that.
What is going on in college football
now, man? It was something that actually happened a few months ago. I think early October. He had a gun at a party or something, and
felony weapons charge stemming from October 7th incident. Charges were filed yesterday. Unclear why it took 2 months for this to happen. That's really suspicious. What is a felony gun charge?
He probably, my guess is, if they took this long, I wonder if the weapon was stolen. That would be the only guess I would have, unless he could have been waving it at people too, which would be a felony. I feel like it has to be one of the two.
Well, they're letting him stay on the team, but he's not going to play.
Yes, correct.
2 gun charges.
In light of circumstances, I have no problem with the indefinite suspension. I'm always in favor of letting the legal process take its course before we condemn someone. Yeah,
because that's very strange with the timing. I mean, I'm not trying to say that he didn't do anything wrong. I'm just pointing out that the time you waited 2 months to file charges on this guy. Like, what is going on?
I did hear something to that. The effect of that was they were investigating and looking at evidence. I don't think they just sat on it until now. I think it actually is above board in the legal sense. But I also think with Purdue, back to who will be on the field, they have nothing to play for. Like, they can do whatever. They can put the pedal to the metal and go. Everybody expects them to lose by 30. And I think they'll go for it. Michigan is a team who I think they're going to play real vanilla. They're not going to give their semifinal opponent, worthwhile film to go off of. I absolutely think Michigan wins, but I think Purdue covers at 16.5.
These are really good points too, but so I think I remember. So the thing was, I remember talking to our good friend of the show, Thor, before last week's game, and talking about the Ohio State Michigan game, and he said that I think we didn't have it wasn't a bad disagreement. It was just I don't know why that spread is so big for Ohio State.
Yeah,
and he said, "Well, where would you put it?" I said, "Well, I would have it at 3.5, but I wouldn't have it at full touchdown."
Yeah.
How much money would I have just made if I was the odds maker on that one?
I don't know. I mean, I think obviously there's a lot of variables there on how much you put down and whatnot. But
I know. But I'm just saying, I had it 3.5 points, lower than what Vegas had it at, and I was still correct. But
you might also, it may have also lost because you may have had more people going in on Ohio State in that case too. So. Yeah.
Well, Ohio State was favored, and they lost by 17. So
yeah, I was thinking if the spread was smaller, you may have had I would have had
way more people bet on Ohio State. Yeah, I would have had way more people bet on that.
Yeah.
But no, my point is, I thought that was going to be a very close game. I thought that Blake Corum was going to really Blake Corum not being in that game was going to hurt Michigan more than it did, and it did.
Yeah.
It did not hurt them. Ultimately in the long run, especially as they got late in the game. Now, where they benefited with a couple really stupid, terrible, awful throws by this first round guy that everybody's touting, CJ Stroud? Yes, absolutely. But to win that game in Columbus by that margin is pretty extraordinary, and you're missing your top player. You're missing your top player. You know, he's been your star all year. He's been the spark for that offense, and you were able to find it with the backup guy. You had a little bit of a rotation going. JJ McCarthy showed up too. Like, he made some throws against man coverage.
He did.
You know, so that was impressive too. So I think that they're going to try to do the same thing. Purdue's going to try to do the same thing, right? Where I get what you're saying, pedal to the metal. They don't have anything to play for. That's kind of a problem too, right? Because
certainly.
If Michigan jumps out 14, 21-0, they're done. They're checking out. They're like, all right, well, we're starting to think about our draft stock. And, hey, coach, I don't want to play anymore. I'm done playing today. I don't want to get hurt. So if things go really bad for Purdue, I think that Michigan runs away with it, wins by 30. So I'm going to go ahead and challenge you on this. I like Michigan.
Okay.
The next game on the slate that we have is Clemson in North Carolina, correct? So
yes, it is.
Clemson is favored by 7.5 over North Carolina. This is another essentially meaningless game because both of these teams have taken losses in the last few weeks. North Carolina State's taken 2. That's eliminated both of them from playoff contention. So you're playing for pride and an ACC championship.
For me, this was the toughest game for me to pick. Because I don't know which defense on either team is going to show up. Neither of them are great. Clemson's is obviously better, but they've also not played well the last couple of weeks. They've had some guys get dinged up. North Carolina's defense has been pretty unremarkable the whole year. But for me, it just came down to the spread at more than a touchdown. I'm going to pick the Tar Heels. Almost no confidence in the game, but I had to pick someone, and I'm gonna, because of the margin there. I know most you and I always pick the game, a team. Most things I've seen, people are picking the over in this game, not a side, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Because it's really unknown which, like you said, which defense is going to show up, and if either one of them even show up. And so, if one doesn't show up, the other is going to score 40. If one does show up, that team's going to score 49 points. So that's a pretty easy one to take. But so I think that before I get into my side of the pick, I do have to ask: did you rush the field at Clemson?
I was not at the game. It was in Clemson. I was back home.
I know. I'm messing with you.
Yeah, I wish I would have. Yeah.
South Carolina fans beat Clemson, knock off the 40-game home game winning streak, and rush the field.
Oh, it was fantastic.
On the road.
Yeah.
And so the NCAA was faced with a double conundrum, which was, do we fine South Carolina for rushing the opposing team's field?
Yeah.
I love that. I thought that was great. Yeah. So I actually have confidence in Clemson on this one. I think that loss is going to hurt them a lot. I understand they're pretty much eliminated from the playoff, and they're basically playing for pride in a big bowl game at this point. But I think that right there is a bounce back game for them. And when you look at North Carolina over the last couple weeks, you lost to Georgia Tech. Tech? You lost? What? And then you go in there and you lose to a third-string quarterback or a fourth-string quarterback, whatever he was, at North Carolina State, your rival. Are you kidding me? I just think that something's going on there. They don't have their shit together at North Carolina right now.
No, they don't.
I've got more confidence in them having their shit together at Clemson. I like them in this one.
That's fair. This game is in Charlotte, too, I believe.
Yeah, we're up to what? Is that 3 or 4 challenges now? That's 4.
That is 4. Yeah, I have them written down. I'll recap them all when we're getting near the end. We have the SEC game next. It is
Tennessee should be playing, but that's beside the point.
In no way should they, but
No,
it's a 17
they
and a half
should.
point spread. No,
They should. We would have the tiebreaker over LSU, buddy.
In what sense, though? Like, but if it came to that, you're rewriting a lot of what ifs that happened before that, though. Because
no, I'm pointing out that if we weren't playing East versus West,
yeah,
just like like the Pac-12 has done,
yeah,
right, where they've eliminated the conferences from the division thing or for the championship, which is right. We're talking about Tennessee would be playing this game.
I think that's unknowable. I don't think we can make that assumption at this point.
No, that is 100% because LSU has the same record as Tennessee.
You're not conceptualizing this accurately, though. You're assuming the schedule
I don't care.
The same
I'm holding the A&M loss against them 1,000%. I am holding the A&M loss.
But you can't say Tennessee would play the same schedule. You may not get Vandy. You may not get Kentucky. You may not get Florida. You might have to play Ole Miss instead. You might have to play.
Oh no. Yeah. So divisions, right? The division. This is how the Pac-12 does it. You still have your divisions.
Yeah.
For scheduling purposes only. That's it. So that's fine. I'm just saying that if we play this season out and we had the Pac-12's rules, LSU is eliminated because Tennessee beat LSU, and by all the tie-breaking procedures that go into that, Tennessee would be playing Georgia for the SEC championship game. That's all I'm saying. The two best SEC teams are not playing right now. Is the point that I'm making.
Are they the two best right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see how we took care of Vanderbilt after they dropped a couple games.
they did. To their credit, I have said on multiple Twitter posts that Clark Lee should have been the SEC Coach of the Year, and I stand by that 100%.
Oh yeah, for those 2 wins, yeah. But Josh Heupel will get it, but that's okay.
He probably will. But Lee, we expected them to have 2 or 3 total wins and 0 conference wins, and they got 2 conference wins and 5 overall wins. That's a good year too for him. I'll give him credit.
No, it's a great year. No, I agree. I hear you. I'm just being a Tennessee homer for a minute. Let me have my fun, man. Quit trying to steal.
You can. It's been 20 years since you have. I will give you that fun.
Yeah. My entire life is what we're talking about, baby. Or at least what I remember of life. Yeah.
That's fair. And
so, so go ahead.
I also,
I
don't want to come off as butting in there. Tennessee is the better team than LSU. I'm not debating that. I was just saying where I felt like we were picking and choosing how we're determining that they should be there. But I like the Bulldogs to cover 17 and a half in this game. It is a massive spread. And I don't like Georgia to cover that big of a spread ever. But against my judgment, I am going with the Bulldogs to cover this spread. Jaden Daniels is dinged up. I don't know what LSU's motivation level will be. They could come out and knock the pants off them like they did Bama a few weeks back.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going with the Bulldogs in this one to solidify their number 1 spot in the CFP.
Yep, totally agree. 100%. I just think that there's way too much going on right now with LSU. It's been a great year one for Brian Kelly.
Yeah,
no doubt.
We didn't talk about Brian Kelly. There's a guy that could be in consideration for Conference Coach of the Year too.
Yeah, honestly, he is. You're right. He probably will get it. Come to think of it, because that was supposed to be like one of the worst teams
I actually think
team in the West.
I actually think Heupel will get it, but they're both in conference. Even see some people saying Beamer. Listen, I'm a South Carolina guy. I wouldn't give it to Beamer. I would say Lee, but Kelly's had a hell of a year one, especially for how depleted that roster was. They've
that is fair. Well. It's a very fair point, but I think that I'm right there with you. I think that the Georgia's going to win this big, and there's Georgia is going to win probably by 24. It might be 30 points. I mean, they're just going to come in here and dominate. They're going to play one of the best games they played all year. Run away with it.
Matchup wise too, it's a good matchup for Georgia because LSU likes to run the ball out to move it. Nobody's ran the ball.
You don't run the ball in Georgia. Yeah, and nobody's done that. Nobody's done that all year. So
let's
go ahead. Toledo.
We will. Yep, our MAC game is next. Toledo is -3 against Ohio. This game is this is a noon game in Ford Field in Detroit, so we are in a dome. And I've said for most of the year, I think Toledo's the best team in that conference. And despite Ohio having a 2 games better conference record, I like Toledo to cover the 3 points. So Toledo's 5-3 in conference, Ohio's 7-1, but the Rockets are 3-point favorites, and I like them to cover. So I'm going Toledo. I like Jason Cannell. He's done a heck of a job there.
Yeah, he has. And Ohio will be missing their quarterback too.
Yep.
Curtis Rourke. He'll be out again. And I think he's done for the year. He might end up transferring out too, to be honest, because he has some NFL interest, and you don't get a lot of attention in the MAC right now from the NFL. So, I do like Toledo in this one. I do think that I understand that I'm breaking my rule again, but I like Toledo, and I just think that Ohio right now they're going to be playing, the other best team in the MAC, and it's going to be too much for them. So
yeah, I agree with you there. I think we're on the same page with that one. We'll get on to one of the P5 games. Next, we have the Big 12 in one of the potentially 2 very meaningful games tomorrow. This game is in the Cowboys Dome, again, another inside one. Kansas State, TCU. We have the Wildcats at 9-3 overall, playing TCU, who's 12-0. TCU's 2.5-point favorites. And I'm liking Kansas State to cover those 2.5 points. This is, I talked with a friend of the show, Thor Nystrom, and he tried to talk me off of this one. He's all about TCU, but I'm letting my better judgment guide me on this one. And I like the Wildcats. I don't know why. They're as fundamentally sound as anybody. They don't make many mistakes. Howard's played well at QB. And in the first time they played, had they not got bitten by the injury bug bad, Kansas State would have won this game. They had 2 QBs get hurt, multiple guys elsewhere. To TCU's credit, they came back and got it done. But part of me thinks the Wildcats get it done tomorrow with a chip on their shoulder. So I'm taking Kansas State. And considering where we're at, I'm assuming you're going to challenge this one, John.
Actually, no. I'm not going to challenge this one.
Okay.
I was thinking that as you were describing this and explaining it, I was thinking that you're making this pick to entice me to challenge.
No, I actually, again, this is a coin flip game. It could go either way.
Yeah, no, really. But I think that from what we saw in the first game, exactly what you just said, Kansas State wins this game without all those injuries.
Yeah.
They've looked really good the last few weeks too. Kansas State is taking care of business. They've been solid. So I like them to continue what they were building off of before everything went wrong against TCU in this first matchup. And like I said, when you have 2 really good teams, it is very, 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 I can't stress this enough. It's very difficult to come in there and win again, especially in a game where you were being so physically dominated, when you were just outmatched and you got the break of your season, So I think that's where, and actually we can make an argument that they got the break of their season against Baylor later on, but still.
And against Kansas, they had some too. Yeah, they've had a few.
Yeah. So, but my point basically being that I do think that Kansas State is going to end this Cinderella dream right here. And then we're going to be having the debate next week, on Twitter about whether TCU should have been let in or not. So
I actually think if it's a close loss, I think TCU still gets in. I'm in the minority there. But if it's a close game and they lost, I think TCU still gets in.
I think that they should be in regardless.
Yeah.
And it's because how many one-loss teams are there right now? There's basically, I don't think there's enough to fill the playoff.
I'm sure there's not. Yeah, that's a fantastic question.
So it's like if they lose their conference championship game after going undefeated, who do you put over them?
So we have USC, Ohio State, like for one-loss teams. I don't know if there are any other FBS one-loss teams. Well,
It
USC,
comes
but
down to
if USC wins, they're in.
if TCU loses,
Yeah,
it's the exact same scenario that we had in 2014. Ohio State is the only team that you could potentially put in front of them. Do you put Ohio State in front of them after losing that game to Michigan the way they did?
That's why I think the margin could be important. If TCU gets rolled, they won't be in. But if it's a very close loss, I think they can get in.
I think that extra game should mean something, to get to the conference championship, whether you win it or lose it.
Totally,
that extra game should mean something. But we also know the committee tends to like teams that are named Alabama and Ohio State, and so we will see. We will see.
We will.
And I'm not saying Alabama's going to get in over TCU. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just pointing out that
I do think by and large, over the years, the committee's done a very good job of picking the top 4 teams. But you make a valid point about their preferences. That is for sure. So we're not challenged on the Big 12 game. That's a good one. So the next game, I believe, is the Fun Belt. We have Coastal Carolina, 8.5-point underdogs going to Troy. This game is a high seed game, so it is at Troy. We have Grayson McCall today was named Conference Player of the Year. He's the only person to ever be Sun Belt Player of the Year 3 times.
He did that missing 3 games.
He's very unlikely to play this week.
Yeah.
And Jamie Chadwell is a man constantly rumored this time of year for a bigger job somewhere else. It will eventually happen. I don't know when or where. I think he'd be a great hire for anybody too. I'm really impressed with him as a head coach. And I am heavily behind the Trojans to cover 8.5 points this weekend. I think, their defense is really nasty this year. They're looking good. And, Gunnar Watson at QB is turning the ball over as much as he's throwing touchdowns. Vidal's a pretty good running back. He has over 1,000 yards. But I just really like Troy's defense to stifle Coastal, especially if McCall's not playing. So I am firmly behind Troy in this one.
Yeah, so what's kind of funny is when I was at the Combine this past March, I ran into a couple Troy coaches, and we were sitting there talking. And looking back on it, it's funny because they told me that they thought they had a really good team.
Yeah.
And they were very serious saying it. But you know how it is. You hear coaches all the time saying, "Oh, I think that we have a really good team." And it's, 5 months before the season starts, so you take it as a grain of salt. But God damn, they really did have a good team. They're like 10-2, right? So, I kind of agree with this. I think I'm right there with you, and I think I like Troy covering the 8.5, and like you said, the defense is great. I just think that there's a really good chance Coastal Carolina is walking into this game and they're not really as prepared as they need to be, especially, maybe the Jamie Chadwell rumors this time are actually true, is what it kind of seems like.
Yeah. Troy hasn't lost a game since the middle of September.
Yeah.
They started 1-2 and they've won everyone since. They lost to Ole Miss in the opener, a game they actually played pretty good at. And then Appalachian State beat them on that fluky as hell, last play. Yeah. And other than that, Troy's been winning games. They're looking good. So I like them. I like them to cover 8.5. I think that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that was that for me, that was one of the easier picks I made out of the docket. For those of you that actually care about that, I don't know that anybody needs to know that thought process, but there you go. Our last game is our American Athletic Conference game, and it is UCF travels to Tulane. This is another home field game, so it will be at Yeoman Stadium in New Orleans. UCF is +4. And I am firmly behind Tulane in this one. I know that UCF did beat them earlier. That was a 7-point game, 38-31, I believe. But I like Tulane. Willie Fritz, they're going to be energized that Willie said he's coming back next year, not taking a job somewhere else. Michael Pratt's a good player. I know you and I both talked about Ty Spears several times. John, heck of a running back who will have a good NFL future. And they are, defensively, they're stout. They're not allowing many passing yards. And just in making the pick, I went with Tulane in this one. So I like the way of the win and cover that 4-point spread, basically saying I like them to win by a touchdown in this one. So, yeah.
So it's interesting because last time we actually picked this game, if I remember correctly. I believe that you picked this game.
I definitely
when they played. Yep, because you picked UCF. And no, you picked Tulane. And I said, maybe we agreed on this one. I said that UCF has more speed than Tulane does. And that was going to be the ultimate decision maker in that game.
I think we picked this. I think you're right. I think I picked it and you didn't challenge me on it.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So this time you're going Tulane. And it's funny because I think that was probably the first time we mentioned Tajay Spears on here. And I was saying, I love this guy and I think that he's awesome and blah, blah, blah. I do. I love Tulane. I think I have a ton of respect for that program, especially the more I've learned about it this year. They've been an awesome, awesome program.
Yeah.
But UCF is fast.
They are.
UCF has some receivers. They have 3 of them that are all NFL guys, and a couple of them are big and fast. Then they got a little guy. Ryan O'Keefe, and he's fast.
Yeah,
all right.
O'Keefe's a good player.
Their defense has been suitable just enough, to take down the teams they've needed to. They beat them earlier this year. I know that I've been talking about 2 great teams, and it's really hard to beat them back to back. But when you have 2 teams that are playing with the same type of, the same sort of identity, where it's speed, using your speed, trying to use your defense to slow a team down. They both play very similarly.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that UCF has already made that decision. They've already shown us what they are. I'm going to go UCF in this one.
Fair. That's an interesting one. That surprised me. It's funny. I didn't talk much about how I thought you challenged me when I talked to I told you Thor had called. We talked about the FAU stuff. This was actually, I'd mentioned the one game he and I talked about, and this one I'm like, I'm going to pick Tulane, and I don't think John will challenge this because he likes Tajay Spears a lot. I guess I was wrong. No,
it's just it's like if it was the other way around, I would be 100% on Tulane. If they were 4-point underdogs, I would be all over it. Yeah. I think that I would jump all over that. But they're 4-point favorites to a team they lost earlier in the year because they had speed. They were beat by speed. Yeah, Tulane hasn't changed anything with what they're doing. They've just been able to run over opponents a little bit more efficiently by not making mistakes. They didn't really make mistakes against UCF either. And so I think that I just think that it's straight up speed for speed. UCF wins.
That's fair. Yeah. So I'll recap our 5 challenges before we
25 points on the line. Boy. Sorry.
So Pac-12, I am on Utah plus 2.5. John likes the Trojans.
Yep, sure do.
In our snow makeup game, Akron is plus 11 at Buffalo. I like the Zips. John's on Buffalo. Big Ten title, Purdue plus 16.5 against Michigan. I like the Boilers to cover that. John likes the Wolverines.
The team up north.
Yep. ACC. 7.5 point spread. I'm on North Carolina. John is on Clemson, who is the favorite. And our last game, the AAC, I like Tulane to cover 4 points against UCF. So that's
good
where
slate.
we are at in those games.
Good.
Yeah,
So,
good games.
so now we get to find out something here, Mike. We're going to find out something this week about ourselves, because all year you've been able to pick all of the best games that you've wanted. In this week, there were no picks. It was straight up, we have a slate, we're picking it.
Yeah.
So now we get to find out just how good you are and how good I am with our picks up against the wall.
Okay, fair. Everything you said is true. Mm-hmm. I think we're leaving out one thing I would like the audience to be aware of.
Okay.
I have not always had access to, or when I have had access to, I've had significant less time to know your picks and what games I'm going to challenge.
This is also true. I will give you that. Yep. I didn't submit my picks for this one either. I just kind of, honestly, I made them on the fly. But
today they weren't. We didn't need them today, though, because I was going to pick first, and then whatever games we pick different were going to be the challenges. So, today it didn't matter at all.
That is a good point that you bring it. That is also true.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike, we're getting you. If you have any last notes here to throw out for people to look out for this week, down to about 3.5 minutes.
We do have the game you said everybody should watch for in FCS. So we do have the number 1 South Dakota State Jackrabbits host Delaware on Saturday. So who should these people be watching for, John? Please tell them.
Nolan Henderson, boy. Yep. Nolan Henderson wanted a quarterback. You know,
he had a heck of a game last week.
He did. They scored 56 points. Yep. I mean, absolute annihilation. And I think that as long as they keep him upright, as long as they can do that in this game, and he run darts, because it's an air raid offense, so they have short throws. Nolan's good at hitting those and being patient when he can and getting rid of the ball when he has to. I think it's going to be very close. I don't know what the spread is, but I'm taking Delaware, to cover it. So I
was very bullish on South Dakota State last weekend. I said they would win by 30. After watching him, I do not believe that I absolutely think South Dakota State will win and will probably play for the national title in a few weeks.
Yeah.
This could be a close game, though.
I think it's very close.
South Dakota State's such road graders up front. I think they'll run the ball, but Henderson's impressive. I looked at him. I was like, whoa, this guy can sling it. So let's see how many touchdowns does he? He has 32 touchdowns on the year. That is fantastic. Any way you slice it. So,
and he popped at me a couple of years ago during the COVID season against Jackson State or Jacksonville State in the playoffs.
Yep.
I mean, unreal game before he got hurt. He was slinging it. He was throwing crazy 15, 20-yard outs on ropes that I was just going, oh, my God, this is an NFL guy that nobody's talking about. But
that's impressive. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that should do this episode of Gridiron Eve. Mike, always appreciate getting on here and talking ball with you, and I feel like I've gotten a lot smarter this year.
Do we have a show next week? I didn't even think about that until just this second.
I think we need to regroup and figure that out. I think that there might be some bowl games or something, maybe the early slate of bowl games we can jump on, but I need to look at the schedule.
Army, Navy, yep.
Oh, right. Army, Navy. Oh, shit. I forgot about that one.
Maybe we'll do a teaser and talk about that game and then the CFP or something.
Yeah.
We can talk about this later, though. The audience doesn't need to know now because we don't know now.
Right. All right. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and be sure to check us out next time. We'll be posting a little bit of info about that. He's Mike Huseman. I'm John Vogel. This is Championship Week of Gridiron Eve. There's my mouse. There it is.